Oscar Bevis, IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast here in Liverpool and joined by Mr. Frank Smith of Matchroom Boxing. How are you, mate?
Very good, mate. Glad to be back.
So I just got the mic tied, so I'm going to keep it rolling though. How are you, Frank?
Very good again. No, good. Really good. Glad to be back, as I'm sure you are, back in the UK. Been a fun few weeks in the US and got some a big run of shows in the UK now.
Yeah, looking forward to this week. Fresh off of Vegas, my Vegas debut. Obviously, I know you know Vegas very well, but yeah, I remember speaking to you. We done something like about a year ago, and about the satisfaction of an event. Just seeing this music's good, isn't it? Just seeing this, I'll say this is a bit of me. I feel like we're in the middle of a rave, but just from an event perspective, obviously, you pulled off a world title fight at the MGM Grand a week after pulling off a world title fight. I don't know if I could do this. A world title fight at Madison Square Garden. From an event perspective, how satisfying was last week for you?
Yeah, great. I think I actually put a post out. We did 5 shows in 3 countries in 15 days, and got another 3 shows coming up. It's great to be able to do shows in these amazing venues. Obviously, you mentioned there the theatre at MSG, MGM Grand, with sold out at the theatre. We had over 7,000-8,000 in there for Devin Haney on Saturday night. It's brilliant, and it's a sign of where the business is going, and we're in a great place, which is it's good to see. Lots to look forward to, and many more big nights to come in many famous venues.
What was sort of the aftermath, would you say, around Team Matchroom with the Devin Haney fight? Obviously, it was on the same weekend as Gervonta Davis, who even Eddie said to me, look, Gervonta is just such a massive draw in the States. Devin fights the same weekend as Gervonta, of course. What was sort of the aftermath of the whole weekend and the way Devin performed, and perhaps tying the two together, and the response from the American side of things?
Yeah, look, it was a great performance from Devin Haney. I think he's shown how he's improving in his last 2 fights. Linares was a great fight, and this one against Jojo Diaz, who's a brilliant fighter as well. It's in terms of comparing the two. I didn't watch the Tank fight, and I think they had something like 9,000 people in there in LA. I'm very sure that more people watched Devin Haney on Saturday night than watched Tank on Sunday night. Tank's obviously a huge star, but Devin's really building, and it's a great journey to be on. He's got many big nights ahead of him, and hopefully we can make that big one against George Kambosos.
And the big one not has to be, but just the way it's being spoken about, it looks like it will be Australia. And to be honest, who's going to turn down a little trip to Australia?
Yeah, look, we've got to look at all opportunities. We've obviously represented Devin Haney for a long time, and see where makes the most sense for that fight to take place. It's like being in a club when the lights come on, isn't it? It's like time to go. Yeah, we've got to see where makes the most sense for that fight. Australia is a market that we've been looking to work in for a long time, have many discussions. And, as you say, it would be a great fight to launch there. But, it's a big fight in the US as well. So, we're looking at all options, and hopefully soon we'll be able to put something together and, hopefully work with George's team, Lou DiBella, etc. Peter Khan, his dad, Jim Kambosos, all a great team of people, and make that big fight and crown a true undisputed champion.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. That is one of the things for 2022. Fury-Whyte. So it has been ordered by the WBC. Obviously, we see like a statement that's put out, and we find out through social media and whatnot. In terms of Matchroom as a team and the people who represent Dillian Whyte, do you find out when us fans find out about this?
It comes out very quickly afterwards. It's almost imminent that the letter goes out to all the relevant parties, and then after that, it's across social media. It's life now, isn't it? Nothing's a secret for very long, is it? So yeah, it's the same way it works with everything. Whether that's a purse bid, whether that's mandatory negotiations, that's always the way it works.
So you've been involved with Dillian for so long, so I can imagine just getting that through. I know you all knew it was going to come at some point, but just getting that through must have just been like a bit of a weight off the shoulders, a relief to know that this can finally go ahead.
Yeah, look, huge fight against Tyson Fury, and it'll be the first time. Well, if it takes place in the UK, Tyson's first time in a while. Tyson's boxed back here, so excited for Dillian Whyte because it's a fight he's wanted for a long time. He didn't care who it was against; he just wanted to fight for that WBC title. So it's been a long time coming, and it's exciting for him because he deserves it.
And in terms of what happens now, I saw something that said there's sort of a free period for negotiation, so basically you guys can negotiate. And then if you don't negotiate before a certain amount of time, it will go to purse bids, and that's essentially how it rolls. It's that simple.
Yeah, so I think it's a 30-day negotiation period, which takes you to sort of early January.
Is it always 30 days with any sort of thing like this? Because it always seems to be around 30 days.
Yeah, I mean every sanctioning bodies do different things for different fights, etc. But 30 days is pretty standard. And then after that, they if no deal is reached, unless the parties agree to some kind of like short extension, it would normally go to a purse bid within sort of 7 days of that. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of work happening on that, and let's see how things play out.
Do you expect it to run smoothly, these negotiations?
I don't know. I kind of think sometimes it's a bit easier with a purse bid than negotiations where you're making a fight. Ultimately the fight's got to happen at the end of the day. So sometimes that does make it a bit easier, because at the end of the day, if neither of you agree, then you go to purse bids, and the most money wins. It's quite a simple way of doing business.
Would you rather it just went straight to purse bids? Cut all the bullshit out of the middle, get them in the ring.
I quite like negotiating fights. It's fun. It's fun going through a 50-page contract and changing it 800 times for lots of meaningless details. That's what my job is, basically. It's fun for me.
You've really sold your job there, Frank. You've really sold your job. I take it this essentially means that any step-aside money for Anthony Joshua and any talk of that, it's only been sort of spoken about for a couple of weeks, but that is sort of out the window now, and Joshua will rematch Usyk.
AJ's focus was always for the Usyk rematch. If it was a plan that made sense for him, and then, as with anything in life, you have to look at all options. That was those discussions for a step aside. Who knows what could happen? Everyone could step aside, and we could see someone else for all the belts. But it just comes down to the offer on the table, doesn't it? But AJ's focus has always been, as he's had throughout his career, taking on the biggest tests.
Yeah, I know obviously because there was potential that we were told he could step aside. I think people from Matchroom, especially Eddie, was kind of weary to say too much. Is there anything now that it's less likely that you can say around figures like, I know 40 million was something that was thrown about. Is that something you can now tell us was either true, false, or?
I don't talk about money. I think it's best. I think it's best to keep numbers out of it. But it was a case of whether the opportunity made sense for Anthony Joshua. But in terms of his mindset has always been to take the biggest fights. He's never shied away from a challenge. He lost against Andy Ruiz. He got straight back in there and took the fight. But for us as his promoter, we have to obviously present all options, as with all our fighters. We have to present the best options to them. So, and if that was an option that we thought was right, then we take it to him.
And in terms of presenting the best options, I can imagine there's going to be some heavy Middle East involvement and pushing potentially for, we know Joshua Usyk because they've had Joshua before and it worked. Potentially maybe for Fury and Dillian as well. Could we see 2 fights, even though there's 3 Brits involved, potentially land in the Middle East?
Look, anything's possible. It could land anywhere, couldn't they? It's US is another big market for heavyweight for fights, but heavyweight fights. But I think with Whyte Fury especially, that would be a great fight in the UK. Huge night in the UK. First time, as I say, Fury's been back there in a while. Joshua Usyk, we sold out Tottenham Stadium. Who's saying we can't do that again, or even bigger? I think let's see how things play out. As I've said, anything happens in this business. I don't like being called back for an interview like 3 months ago, because in the last 13 years, so many things have changed every day that I think it's best just to be a bit open to all opportunities.
You've got to be like that because, and it's happened to Eddie, and not because he's said something he shouldn't in a way, because I suppose in the sport of boxing at the time, you can say something that can look like it's biting you on the arse in like 2 months later, but essentially that's kind of how it works. Things change, so
a day later, like literally, you could leave here and everything changes tonight.
Look, if you look at the landscape a year ago compared to now, how different it is basically.
If you look at the landscape 3 months ago, 6 months ago to now, and if you look at things that you would have said, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this is going to go there, this is going to be called as a mantra, etc., then it'd be great if you were psychic. You wouldn't have to play guessing games all the time. But that is the joys of boxing. Everything changes every day.
Frank, just finally, like I said, we're here in Liverpool for a show headline or a co-headline between Conor Benn, Chris Algieri and Katie Taylor against Fitzroy Sharapova, if I got that right. Yeah, two of Matchroom stars, and going to be a good show on Saturday night.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think Conor Benn, it's a good challenge for him. It's a step up. You know, Algieri's got a lot of experience, and these are the types of fights he needs in order to keep building and growing his career. You know, these types of learning fights, because you know, you're not going to just make that jump. There's such a gulf, isn't there? And you know, he needs to go through these experience fights. And we've seen with Kiko Martinez, is a perfect example, isn't it? Against Kid Galahad recently. You know, that experience means a lot in this sport, and you know, I think it's a good test for him. Katie Taylor, obviously back up and running again. Good fight against a WBA mandatory. Sharapova, who we saw tonight, in great shape, and you know, is bringing a fight. You know, they're ready for it. You know, all focus for Katie is on this fight, and then hopefully moving forward we can make that big one against Serrano, which has been a long time coming. But that's the biggest fight in female boxing, but you know, but a huge fight for boxing in general.
Just in terms of Conor Benn, obviously, I remember having this conversation with Eddie a few months ago, and there was the period where you had Bellew, Brooke, you had your sort of guys who would have the big draws essentially, and then they could have pay-per-view fights. Now we've kind of lost some of those stars to retirement. Is there a lot of pressure around Matchroom and Conor Benn to get this right? Because I feel like Conor Benn's being centred as, right, he is our next pay-per-view star. So is there quite a lot of pressure around not just Conor in the ring, but the team around him to nail this journey?
With all our fighters, it's always been the same, isn't it? There's always periods that you go through where you've got those 2, 3, 4 stars who are the ones that you're looking at to say they can be in the big fights, they can be in the pay-per-view shows. And it's just a period of time of building them, isn't it? Now, Conor Benn, yes, he's definitely one of those. You know, Joshua Buatsi is one of those. Lawrence Okoli is one of those. You know, but it's also relevant fights that are relevant. You know, there's a number of fights that make sense to be in those big nights. So yeah, you know, we had that period where people, you know, fighters like the likes of Bellew you mentioned there, like have sort of stepped away. It was the same when Froch stepped away. Who was next from there? And you know, it's just a period of time where you grow and build the stars. And there's always new stars. It just takes a few years to get them to that point where they are where Bellew is. Like, how long was Bellew around for? You know, before that, you look back to Bellew's career, like when he went and fought Adonis Stevenson, and then he had so many more big fights after that, didn't he? You know, so it's just a period of growing and building stars, and it's what we do, and it will happen. And you know, we've got to do the right thing for the fighters, and we've got to step them up at the right time and put them in the right fights. We're not always going to get it perfectly right, but that's the sport we're in. And if there was a perfect formula, you wouldn't ever see anyone lose, and you'd just have everyone would be undefeated. And you know, but these things all build a fighter. You know, being a bit risky in a fight, or you know, maybe getting caught by a shot, or going down, or losing a fight and coming back, doesn't mean anything. You know, so it's all part of the story of building a fighter. Is my answer in that.
In the long form, that did make sense. Yeah, in the long form. Well, yeah, we look forward to seeing Conor in the ring, Kate in the ring, and everyone on the undercard, of course. And yeah, Frank, thank you for giving me some of your time. And yeah, the week will roll on.
You look like you've just recovered from your Vegas hangover.
I haven't slept. I reckon I'm on 30 odd hours now.
30.
Not that I'm trying to flex, right? It's not cool.
I've probably had about 7 or 8 hours sleep in the last 3 days, so I know the pain.
You sleep on the plane?
Yeah, I took some melatonin, which it knocked me out. I fell asleep before we took off. I woke up 30 minutes before.
You can sleep on the plane because you're in first class. You turn left when you get on. I can't sleep on the plane because my chair is made of wood and it's straight.
Yeah, but I didn't always do that. It was only the last few years that I got the golden keys. And also, I do fly about 100 times a year. So I don't think I'd be in any fit... I'm not in a fit state as it is. So I think I'd be in a bit of a worse state if I didn't get any sleep at all.
Fair enough. Frank Smith, pleasure. And yeah, top man.
Good to see you.